Cod Wars, fishing disputes between the UK and Iceland. In an era before climate change, overfishing, and exclusive economic zones dominated global discourse, a small island nation in the North Atlantic waged an unusual but consequential battle for survival. Between the late 1950s and mid-1970s, Iceland and the United Kingdom clashed over cod, turning the North Atlantic into a theater of naval maneuvering, political brinkmanship, and strategic innovation. These confrontations, now known as the Cod Wars, were fought not with armies or tanks, but with fishing trawlers, patrol vessels, and legal leverage, demonstrating that even resource disputes can escalate into high-stakes international conflicts. For Iceland, cod was far more than a commodity. It was economic lifeblood, cultural identity, and national security, sustaining communities whose survival depended on access to fish-rich waters. British fleets, with centuries of fishing tradition, threatened those livelihoods, prompting Iceland to assert control over its surrounding seas through unilateral territorial extensions, clever naval tactics, and strategic diplomacy. The Cod Wars reshaped international maritime law, set a precedent for sustainable fisheries, and showed that small nations could defend vital resources against global powers. In 2026, they are more than historical curiosities. They are a blueprint for resource sovereignty, environmental stewardship, and small state resilience in a rapidly changing world. Let's watch. 1. Iceland's lifeline: fisheries as a national imperative. For Iceland, cod was more than food. It was economic survival, cultural identity, and national security. By the mid-20th century, foreign fleets, particularly from the UK, had heavily fished the North Atlantic, threatening livelihoods and destabilizing local communities. Icelanders recognized that overfishing could cripple the nation. The government acted decisively, unilaterally extending fishing zones in stages. First 12 nautical miles, later 50, and finally 200 nautical miles, aligning with what would become international norms under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS. These measures were necessary not only to protect resources, but to ensure the survival of coastal communities dependent on fisheries. This approach reflected forward-thinking, resource management decades before sustainable fishing became a global conversation. 2. The First Cod War, 1958-1961. When Iceland extended its waters to 12 nautical miles in 1958, the UK initially refused recognition. British trawlers continued fishing, prompting Iceland to deploy the Coast Guard, cutting nets and escorting ships out of disputed waters. Skirmishes were frequent. Collisions occurred, though no lives were lost. The conflict tested small vessel tactics against larger, more heavily armed ships. Public opinion in both countries became increasingly involved as Iceland framed its actions as a fight for survival and the UK emphasized economic interests. By 1961, the UK reluctantly accepted the 12-mile limit, but the conflict highlighted unresolved questions about territorial waters and maritime sovereignty. 3. The Second Cod War, 1972-1973. Tensions escalated in 1972 when Iceland extended its fishing zone to 50 nautical miles, directly threatening the economic interests of British fleets. In response, Iceland deployed agile patrol vessels that employed innovative tactics, including cutting trawl nets, executing rapid maneuvers, and using detailed knowledge of local geography to outflank the larger, heavily armed British ships. Despite their superior firepower, British frigates struggled to counter Iceland's nimble vessels. Collisions became frequent, drawing international attention and scrutiny to the unconventional maritime conflict. Beyond naval tactics, Iceland also leveraged diplomacy, hinting at withdrawal from NATO to pressure the UK into negotiations, demonstrating the effective use of strategic leverage by a smaller nation. Ultimately, Britain agreed to the 50-mile limit, marking a significant victory for Iceland. 4. The Third Cod War, 1975-1976. The Third Cod War erupted when Iceland unilaterally declared a 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, EEZ, a bold move that would later become a global standard under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS. This extension directly challenged British fishing interests, escalating tensions in the North Atlantic. Naval confrontations intensified as Icelandic patrol vessels employed skillful ramming tactics against larger British frigates protecting trawlers. While mostly non-lethal, dozens of ships were damaged and minor injuries occurred, underscoring the high stakes of this unconventional maritime conflict. The situation also tested NATO alliances, as both nations were members navigating diplomatic sensitivities. 5. Strategic lessons. Small nations versus global powers. The Cod Wars provide a textbook example of asymmetrical conflict, where a smaller nation successfully challenged a far more powerful adversary. Iceland could not compete with the United Kingdom in terms of sheer naval strength or firepower, but it leveraged geography, agility, legal authority, and diplomacy to defend its most critical resource, fisheries. Icelandic tactics were innovative and highly effective. Net cutting, rapid coastal maneuvers, and strategic positioning allowed smaller patrol vessels to neutralize the advantage of larger British frigates. Beyond naval strategy, Iceland also applied political leverage, threatening measures such as withdrawing from NATO, which increased diplomatic pressure and forced concessions from the UK 6. Economic and environmental implications. The Cod Wars fundamentally reshaped both national economies and approaches to marine management. For Iceland, securing control over its fisheries meant long-term economic stability and the ability to maintain sustainable cod populations, protecting a resource central to the nation's survival and cultural identity. British coastal communities, by contrast, faced economic disruption, prompting adjustments in fishing practices, restructuring of industrial fleets, and shifts in local employment patterns. 7. Legacy in 2026. Resource sovereignty and global relevance. Today, the Cod Wars remain highly relevant in discussions about climate change, overfishing, and the role of small states in global diplomacy. Iceland's ability to protect its fisheries demonstrates that legal frameworks, strategic innovation, and international pressure can enable even small nations to defend critical resources against larger powers. The conflicts also played a pivotal role in shaping the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea UNCLOS, which governs maritime rights and resource management worldwide. Their legacy offers valuable lessons for contemporary disputes over Arctic waters, deep-sea minerals, and global fishing rights, showing that true power often lies in strategy, persistence, and leverage, rather than sheer military strength. Beyond economics and law, the Cod Wars underscore a timeless principle. Survival often depends on strategy, foresight, and persistence, rather than sheer size or firepower. For policymakers, environmentalists, and strategists alike, Iceland's fight against overfishing illustrates that defending natural resources is not just a matter of commerce, it is a matter of national resilience. The Cod Wars remind us that even disputes over fish can shape history, law, and the future of global resource management. Let us know in the comments what you think about the Cod Wars fishing disputes between the UK and Iceland, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more captivating content on our YouTube channel.